Hello everyone. Today I will talk about an important topic in microeconomics, utility and choice. In this video, we are going to talk about four topics. First one is cardinal versus ordinal utility, then total utility and marginal utility, and the relationship between them, and lastly, law of diminishing marginal utility. So let's start with utility and choice. So what is utility and choice? Utility simply means the satisfaction or pleasure that a consumer gets from consuming goods and services. Since our economy is limited, we cannot buy everything we want, so we have to make choices. Economics studies how consumers make these choices to maximize their satisfaction. Utility is a key concept because it helps us understand consumer behavior. When people make decisions about what to buy, they are guided by the satisfaction they expect to receive. For example, when you choose to buy a cold drink on a hot day, you are expecting satisfaction or utility from it. There are some key concepts of utility. First one is utility refers to one satisfying power of a commodity. We measure utility in utils. Utils is an abstract units because we cannot observe any interpersonal comparison. And lastly, utility differs from person to person, place to place, time to time. Utility differs from person to person because we already said that utility cannot observe interpersonal comparison. So the satisfaction a person get from some goods cannot be the same for another person. For the difference of place to place is because of varying needs, preferences, resources, and prices in different locations. Suppose a good is very much in demand in one place, and because they are in that place, the price of that goods is low, but the same goods is less demanded in another places because of its price is high. So utility differs from place to place. And lastly, time to time. It actually refers to the seasonal effect. Because suppose you the same level of utility the level of utility you get from eating an ice cream in summer cannot be the same you get from eating in winter. Now let's look at two different ways economists have studied utility. The first one is cardinal utility, and the second one is ordinal utility. The cardinal utility approach assumes that utility can be measured in exact numbers called utils. For example, if eating one apple gives you 10 utils of satisfaction and eating two apples gives you 10, 18 utils, then we can say that two apples gives you 8 more utils than one. On the other hand, the ordinal utility approach says that utility cannot be measured in number, but it can be ranked. For example, a person may prefer tea to coffee and coffee to juice, but we don't know exactly how much. Modern economics generally accepts the ordinal approach because satisfaction is subjective and cannot be measured like weight or height. Here you can see the differences between cardinal utility and ordinal utility. We have already talked about these things previously. Now, moving on to our next topic is total utility and marginal utility. Total utility or TU is the overall satisfaction a person gets from consuming a certain quantity of goods. Suppose if you are eating three apples, first apple gives you 10 utils, then the second apple gives you 8 utils, and the third apple gives you 6 utils. So the total utility you get from consuming 3 apples is 24 utils. Then we have marginal utility or MU. Marginal utility is the extra or additional satisfaction a person gets from consuming one more unit of a good. For example, if eating 3 apples gives you 50 utils of satisfaction and eating 4 apples gives you 60 utils, then the marginal utility of the fourth apple is 10 utils. This shows how each additional unit contributes to overall satisfaction. Now we are going to see a data schedule of total utility and marginal utility. Here in this data schedule, you can see a single good when first we get from consume, we get 10 utils. Then for the second unit, we get 18 utils, which means that for the second unit of the good, the extra utils we get is 8 utils. And the more you consuming, the more marginal utility is decreasing, up decreasing. And when we and after eating 7 unit of goods, we can see the satisfaction level becomes 0, which means after any more unit of goods eating from it, we cannot get any additional satisfaction. Here, we can also derive a graph from the data schedule. Now, let's talk about the relationship between them. There is an important relationship between total utility and marginal utility. The first one is, as long as marginal utility is positive, total utility will continue to increase. And when its marginal utility falls to 0, total utility reaches its maximum point. And if marginal utility becomes negative, then total utility will actually start to decrease. This relationship is often shown on a graph. Total utility rises at first, then flattens when marginal utility reaches 0, and eventually declines when marginal utility is negative. Moving on to our last topic is law of diminishing marginal utility. One of the most important principles in economics is the law of diminishing marginal utility. It states that as a consumer consumes more and more units of a good, the additional satisfaction from each unit will decrease. Let me give an example, simple example. The first slice of pizza tastes amazing. The second slice is still good, but not as exciting. By fourth or fifth slice, you feel full and your satisfaction stops increasing. If you force yourself to eat a sixth slice, you may feel uncomfortable. Here, marginal utility has become negative. This law explains why demand curves slope downward because people are only willing to buy more of a good if its price falls. Law of diminishing marginal utility has some assumptions. Without this, we cannot measure law of diminishing marginal utility. The first one is cardinal measurement of utility. The cardinal measurement of utility is the idea that utility can be measured in exact numerical terms, just like weight or length. In this approach, utility is expressed in imaginary units called utils. For example, eating 1 apple gives 10 utils of satisfaction. Eating 2 apples gives 18 utils. Eating 3 apples gives 24 utils. This means we can calculate and compare utilities in absolute number. In summary, the cardinal measurement of utility assumes satisfaction can be measured in absolute numbers, which is utils. It is useful for explaining consumer behavior, but unrealistic in practice. Then we have monetary measurement of utility. Utility is a subjective concept. It represents the satisfaction of a consumer gets, but early economists tried to measure utility in terms of money because money is the common standard of value. In monetary measurement, utility is expressed as the maximum amount of money a consumer is willing to pay for a commodity. For example, suppose you are willing to pay 100 taka for a concert ticket. So the utility is 100 for you. But the actual ticket price is 70 taka. Then the extra satisfaction you get is 30 utils, which is also known as consumer surplus. Here, money is used as the unit to measure utility. In summary, monetary measurement of utility means expressing utility in terms of money. It assumes constant marginal utility of money and is closely linked concept like consumer demand and consumer surplus. Next is consumption of reasonable quantity. The assumption of reasonable quantity means a consumer should consume units of a good in normal practical amounts, neither too small or too large, for the law of DMU to hold true. If the quantity is too small, the law may not work because each unit gives almost the same satisfaction. If the quantity is too large, the consumer may get tired, sick, or uncomfortable, and utility may fall sharply in an unrealistic way. So the law works properly only when consumption is in ordinary, reasonable quantities. For example, drinking water in reasonable glasses. First glass is very satisfying, second glass less satisfying, and third glass still less. But if you measure water in tiny drops, each drop gives nearly the same satisfaction. So DMU may not appear. If you measure in a whole bucket at once, the consumer may not even finish it. So DMU does not apply properly. In short, the consumption of reasonable quantity as assumption ensures that the law of diminishing marginal utility reflects real-life consumption behavior. Then we have continuous consumption. The assumption of continuous consumption means that the units of a good must be consumed successively without long breaks of time. If there is a long gap between consuming units, the consumer's level of satisfaction may reset and the law will not work properly. For example, if you drink 3 glasses of water one after another, your satisfaction from each additional glass will decrease. So the law of diminishing marginal utility holds. But if you drink one glass now and the next glass after 2 hours, your thirst may return and the law and the second glass may again give high satisfaction, which means law of DMU fails. In short, the assumption of continuous consumption means that goods must be consumed in succession without long gaps so that the decline in marginal utility can be observed correctly. Now, rational consumer. A rational consumer is someone who makes consumption decisions logically with the aim of maximizing satisfaction from their limited income and resources. This assumption is very important in consumer behavior theories. For example, suppose you have 100 taka to spend. A rational consumer will compare different options and chooses the combination that gives the maximum satisfaction within the budget. If one option gives less utility for the same cost, the rational consumer won't choose it. So, the rational consumer assumption means that consumers act logically, use their limited income efficiently, and aim to maximize satisfaction. On next agenda, we have fixed income and prices. This assumption means that during the process of consumption, prices of goods remain constant, which means no increase or decrease in market price, and consumers' income also remains unchanged. which means no sudden rise or fall in earnings. This ensures that the changes in utility may come only from consumption of goods, not from changes in price or income. Suppose a consumer has an income of 100 taka and the price of chocolates is 10 taka each. If both remain constant, the consumer can buy at most 10 chocolates, and we can study how utility changes each chocolate as each chocolate is consumed. But if suddenly the price drops to 5 taka or income rises to 150 taka, the consumer's choices will change. The law may not hold in the same way. Therefore, the assumption of fixed income and prices ensures that the analysis of utility and consumer behavior is done in a stable environment, focusing only on satisfaction gained from consumption. And the last one is no change in quality. This assumption says that while consuming successive units of a commodity, the quality of each unit must remain the same. If the quality improves, the consumer may get more satisfaction from later units, which violates the law. If the quality fails, the consumer may get less satisfaction too quickly, which also distorts the law. For example, suppose you are eating mangoes. If the first mango is medium quality and the second mango is sweeter and fresher, your satisfaction will rise instead of falling. If the second mango is spoiled, your satisfaction may drop suddenly. In both cases, the normal diminishing pattern of utility does not appear. So, for DMU to hold, each unit consumed must be identical in quality, size, and taste. So, the assumption of no change in quality means that all units consumed must be of the same quality. If quality changes, the law of diminishing marginal utility may not work properly. So, with this, we have concluded our today's topic. Hope you guys all liked my video and understood all of the things. Thank you so much.